everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk Physical Media. My name is John, and it's just going to be me riding solo this week. Like we told you guys last week at this current time that you're watching this video, Faith and I are on vacation, so I had to film this video in advance, and I waited till the Wednesday before the show actually came out. And thank God I did, because we had a really big news story break in the world of physical media right before I started filming, and that's that the Digital Bits is reporting that the Disney Movie Club is going to be shutting down. Now, me personally, I never used the Disney Movie Club, but it was a nice way for a lot of people to buy directly from Disney. You signed up for a subscription and you got a discount on Blu-rays, DVDs, 4K Blu-rays, as long as they were a Disney property like Star Wars, Marvel, Pixar, Disney Animation. You were able to buy it directly from Disney and probably get a discount on it. Now that is going to be shutting down, and right after they reported that shutting down, it turns out that the reason for that was Disney struck a deal with Sony, and Sony is going to be distributing and marketing all of Disney's physical media here in the United States and Canada. So that means any Blu-ray, 4K Blu-ray that Disney puts out, Sony will actually be the ones putting it out, distributing, and marketing it. Now, there was no update on who will actually be doing the scans for these, or if they're going to be taking scans that Disney already has and now finally distributing them. Like we've heard that the Fight Club 4K scan has been done for a really long time, and ever since Disney bought 20th Century Fox, they've just been sitting on that. And that's another big thing that a lot of people are probably really excited about, including myself, is we'll finally get releases, hopefully, of 20th Century Fox films that Disney bought and just sat on, and we haven't gotten a new physical media release in a very long time, like movies like The Rock. We're finally getting Aliens. That was one that was kind of stuck in 4K limbo for a very long time, and a lot of that was probably tied up with James Cameron, and that's why we're going to be getting that on March 12th. But a lot of people are hoping for a lot of Disney films and Disney-owned films to be coming to 4K Blu-ray, and that's the real exciting part about this whole thing. The only thing is we didn't get any information on who will be doing the scans. Is Disney still going to be doing the scans and then just allowing Sony to distribute and market it, or is Sony themselves going to be doing the scans, which is what I personally hope for. And that's because Sony has some of the best 4K Blu-ray releases out there. When it comes to major labels, you know, Sony, Paramount, Warner Brothers, Disney, usually Sony is the best of them. Boutique labels are a little bit different. Usually they get a little bit more love and care. They're usually done by fans of the film, so they make sure that those come out as pristine as possible, depending on the source material. Whereas major studios, you know, they got to meet deadlines. You know, maybe people are working on the film who don't necessarily care about the film. They're just there to do a job, which I can really appreciate that. I completely understand how the business world works and how these corporations are run, so I don't want to fault the people actually working on it. I understand that they're rushed, but sometimes we end up with a half-ass release. But for the most part, Sony doesn't do that. Sony usually gives us some world-class releases. I was actually talking to somebody on the channel this week, and we were talking about how Warner Brothers and Sony usually give us the best Dolby Atmos tracks out there. So this is really good news, because Disney is notorious for giving us the worst Dolby Atmos tracks out there. I saw a lot of people already hoping that they re-release all of the MCU films on 4K Blu-ray, give us brand new Dolby Atmos tracks, because just like myself, a lot of people feel like Disney dropped the ball and half-assed that. That's because a lot of those were coming out at a time when Disney was really pushing Disney Plus. All right, now get out there and make me some goddamn money. And Disney Plus would always end up with like the IMAX scenes. They had the best versions on Disney Plus because that's where they wanted you to go, and they kind of let their physical media department fall at the wayside. I was hoping here on the channel, I've been saying it for a very long time, I was hoping Disney would lease out the rights to their films to a studio that actually wanted to distribute them and, you know, get it out to the physical media market, because the physical media market really does need this. We need a studio that cares about it, it's going to market it correctly, get it in front of the right people, because if you guys have seen lately, DVDs are still the highest selling form of physical media. No matter what, DVDs still sell the best. 4K Blu-ray still have the smallest piece of the pie, so we still haven't gotten the word out about 4K Blu-ray to the average consumer. Yes, the movie collectors out there are aware of 4K Blu-ray and the power of 4K Blu-ray.
These powers, I could be a superhero! I could fight crime, protect the innocent. Work for world peace!
That's what we talk about here on the channel. But your regular consumer, regular person who just goes to the movies like once or twice a year, maybe picks up like 3 or 4 DVDs for the kids, that's all they really care about is DVD. They probably don't even care about Blu-ray. They're probably aware of Blu-ray, but most of them probably haven't even heard of 4K Blu-ray. They're not walking to the movie section of a store, which is, again, very disappointing that Best Buy doesn't sell physical media anymore, because, you know, maybe you attract somebody to buy a TV and you're like, you know what you need? You need a 4K Blu-ray player to go along with this, and then I'm going to show you the world of 4K Blu-rays. But, you know, we're trying to sell streaming services now, but we want to try and move more people to the physical media market, and hopefully with a studio like Sony, they market it correctly, they put out some really high quality big name films from Disney that they have the rights to now. They distributed them in the highest quality, and then everybody is happy. And this could be a big deal for the physical media market. Hopefully it all works out. You know, obviously this is the very early stages of this deal. At the time of me recording this, we haven't even gotten an official statement from Disney or Sony regarding this deal. I've only seen it reported online, and it's been confirmed, but I still haven't seen an official statement from them. Disney did release an official statement about the closing of the Disney Movie Club, so that is 100% happening. But you know, this deal is happening, but we just don't have as much information. Apparently, the first film that Sony will be releasing with the Disney brand, it's going to be a 20th century film, The First Omen. That is going to be the first film that Sony puts out with a Disney property, so we can look for that probably sometime in the fall. I think that film is coming out this summer, so you can imagine probably like September, October, we'll finally get our hands on one of these Sony Disney releases, and I'm looking forward to it. We'll get more information in the coming weeks, but this is pretty big news, so I'm curious, what do you guys think about Sony taking over Disney's physical media division? Personally, I'm really excited about it, even though I'm a little bit disappointed for the people who were invested in the Disney Movie Club. And there was also some really big news that I'm really excited about. One of the movies I've wanted brought to 4K Blu-ray for a very long time. If you guys have seen videos here on the channel, you've talked about my most anticipated 4K Blu-rays, and one movie I always wanted on 4K Blu-ray, really high up on the list, just like the Terminator, was Once Upon a Time in the West. And it turns out on May 14th, we're going to get a Paramount Presents release of Once Upon a Time in the West, and I cannot wait. I am so excited for this. This is my second favorite Western of all time, only behind Unforgiven. I think that this is Sergio Leone's best film that he's ever directed, even better than the Dallas trilogy, and I love the Dallas trilogy. I love The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but this movie just works perfectly for me. Love all the performances in it, love the cinematography in it. I just love this movie completely, and the thing that really stands out the most in an already great film that has great performances from actors like Henry Fonda and Charles Bronson is the amazing Amira Morricone score. That score is one of my favorite scores in film history, and I just think it matches up to this film perfectly, and I just cannot wait to see this on 4K Blu-ray. I've been really wanting to revisit this film for a long time, and I thought, you know what, maybe this is the year that we'll finally get it, so I'll hold off on it, and now I know I'm going to get to revisit this film on May 14th, 2024, and I just cannot wait. Now, it's Paramount, so we have our fingers crossed that the scan is done very well. You know, we talked about Footloose, which I didn't think was a great scan from Paramount, and Paramount can really give us some amazing scans, and they could also give us some awful scans, so it's really a 50-50 shot if this is going to be any good. My guess is that it's going to be great. I really hope so. I think the source material is going to be in good shape, and it's one of those important Western films that a lot of people love, including myself, who are really anticipating this 4K Blu-ray. And the last bit of news that we didn't cover on last week's show, we did talk about it in a couple other videos, and that was that The Crow is coming to 4K Blu-ray on May 7th, another film that I really just cannot wait to come to 4K. I knew this was probably the year. We had heard rumors since the end of last year that this was coming, but we finally got our first look at the box art. The steelbook of this looks absolutely gorgeous, and from what it looks like, it's going to be a steelbook with a slipcover over it, very similar to what they did with Running Man, which just makes me super excited. I love what they did with Running Man. I love it when they put a slipcover over a steelbook. You know, Lionsgate does this a lot, where they kind of blend the artwork together. This looks like it's a completely different slipcover over the steelbook, but either way, it looks absolutely gorgeous, and it looks like there's also a regular slipcover version that looks just as good, but I have to get my hands on that steelbook. It looks incredible, and I really hope, and I'm pretty sure again, that this will be a fantastic scan. Do some justice to Brandon Lee, and The Crow is one of those 90s classics that a lot of people, including myself, have to watch every single year, so we cannot wait for this one to come to 4K Blu-ray. And then one last bit of minor news. It turns out that Walmart has actually bought Vizio TVs, so now Walmart owns Vizio. I personally have only owned one Vizio TV in my lifetime, and it was pretty good. It never broke. I ended up selling it, so I have no complaints about Vizio. You know, they're more of a bargain brand TV. Me personally, I would always recommend either a Sony TV or an LG TV. I have two LGs and a Sony TV, two LG OLEDs, and one Sony 950H. I think those TVs are personally the best that you can get. Now, Samsung, I've had some bad experiences with Samsung, but that could just be some bad luck. They both had power source issues where I had to get the power source replaced. They actually literally had the same issue despite being two different TVs from two different eras, so it's just bad luck in that sense. Me personally, I'll always go LG or Sony, but if you are somebody who likes Vizio TVs, they will now be owned by Walmart. Walmart, which is pretty interesting. So you'll probably see a lot more Vizio brand TVs when you go into your local Walmart. So that was the last bit of news this week, and now we're going to get into the Q&A portion of the show, which is going to be the bread and butter of the show. So let's just dive right into it. And the first question is from Kevin Kruger, and he asks, what is your opinion of Gen Z and a lack of respect for physical media? My coworker thinks buying DVDs is a waste of money because why would you buy a DVD for $10 and throw it in the trash after you watch it once? Also, they have no knowledge of older movies. The Gen Zers that I work with have never seen a single movie in the 80s. No idea what Goodfellas, Scarface, or even Robert De Niro are. The younger generation can't watch something that is before the year 2000. So I actually have a theory on this, and there are actually a few Gen Zers who actually do watch this channel who I've actually spoken to, and they collect physical media and they're very aware of older film. That's one thing though, it's not necessarily the whole generation. We can't put everybody into one generation and just say, hey, they don't like older films. That's not necessarily true. You know, I'm 32 years old. I was born in 1992. You know, most of my favorite films actually came out before I was born in the 1970s and 1980s, but a lot of older films that I love, I had to actually do the work and go out and find them, especially when it comes to really old film like the 1930s and 1940s. Yes, you've heard of The Wizard of Oz, you've heard of Casablanca, you know, the big ones that kind of still get satire to this very day in Nicktoons. You know, you hear of those films, but you don't hear about the ones that not everybody talks about. You need somebody out there to tell you that these films are good for you to go out of your way and find them. And unfortunately, we just live in a different generation now where most people kind of have very short attention spans. They're not going to sit there and watch a 2.5-hour film in black and white unless they are a true cinephile. Now, the whole thing for the film community is to try and let younger viewers know, younger people know, hey, there's this whole world of art you could unlock if you just, you know, set the time aside, and you kind of have to retrain your brain. You know, a lot of us, including myself, we kind of grew up in that 50-50 generation where, you know, half of our life we didn't really have cell phones. You know, the internet was there, but it wasn't a big deal like it is now where it's on your cell phone. Like, the internet didn't really hit my cell phone until I was already out of high school, so my brain had already been trained for films. That was always my favorite form of art. But the younger generation has grown up with cell phones, so of course they've grown up with TikTok, Reels, Shorts, all of that, where, you know, you get all the information in 1 to 3 minutes. They probably spend a lot more time on YouTube watching 9 to 10 minute videos, and they're not taking in a form of art from an hour and a half to 3.5 hours long. Now, what you got to do is try and take those younger people, explain to them what this art form is, try and show them older forms of art, help them appreciate it. You know, it's not that easy, but as long as somebody wants to become a cinephile, they will do the work. That's the whole thing. The problem is we're just not making more cinephiles nowadays. A lot of people who actually get invested in the art form of film, and we can see this when you look at box office numbers. Not everyone's going to the movies, physical media sales. You know, people just aren't buying this stuff anymore. Streaming services are pushed down everybody's throat where you just have everything at your fingertips, and it just seems easier. You don't have to get out of your bed or off your couch to put a movie on. They don't really care about the quality of it, but that's not everybody, so we can't rope the entire generation in. It just seems like, and it is true, that the younger generation, it's just everybody in general really has a shorter attention span, and the film form, which you have to commit a lot of time to, is hard for a lot of people. And then, you know, we get the surface level fans who might see like 5 or 6 movies a year, and most of them are not going to be buying a movie physically. I don't even think they're probably buying movies digitally. They're probably just streaming movies, looking for it on a streaming service, and most you might get them to rent it from Amazon or Apple for $3.99, and that's really it. And it's unfortunate. Obviously, this is a big physical media channel. I want to push physical media, but I also just want people to watch movies, even if they don't collect physical media. I just want people to watch film again. For me, that's the juice, is the film in general. I just love movies. Any which way you could watch a movie, I will not shame you. If you watch it on your iPhone, watch it on your iPhone. Just take in these movies, these forms of art. I personally don't recommend that. I think you should watch it on the best TV you possibly can with the best sound system you possibly can, and buying a physical media disc, you know, uncompressed audio and visuals, I think that is the icing on the cake. But if you don't have the means for it, just watch the movie any way you can. Go and support your local theater, because that is always the best way to support film. Us and the older generations, we have to just make younger viewers aware of film. That's the whole thing. You know, you can't kind of shame them. That's the whole, we can't gatekeep. I see this a lot on Twitter, which is basically just a cesspool anyway, where people just kind of gatekeep and talk about how other people like, oh, you haven't seen all these movies. No, we can't do that. We got to kind of just ease them into it, because then they get defensive. So you have to just try and bring them into it in a very natural way and be like, you know what? Yeah, I haven't seen this movie from the 1980s. I highly recommend it. Try and compare it to a film that that they've watched already. That's always the best way. Be like, oh, you like this movie? Well, you'll probably like this movie that came out in 1987. That's always the job of a critic, is to try and compare other movies and try and bring new viewers in. That's always what you want to do, and we just cannot shame these people for it. We just have to make them more aware of what film is and what physical media is and why it is important. So I don't think it's the whole generation. We just have to make them more aware. But that was a great question, Kev, and that really got me thinking. I reached out to some other people, and a lot of them don't collect movies, but it doesn't matter really what the age is. I work in a regular Joe job, and nobody there collects film. They all think I'm an idiot for spending all my money on physical media. I don't think I'm an idiot, but you have to figure that the general audience isn't buying movies anymore. Everyone used to have like a little VHS collection or a little DVD collection, but we have thousands of movies on our shelf, and we're kind of in the minority. We're in our little film bubble here, and it's just very different. But that is a great question, Kevin. Thank you so much, buddy. And the next question is from Carlos Chavez, and this is actually a question for both me and Faith, but because Faith's not here and we didn't answer it last week, I'm going to answer it now and we'll ask Faith next week. And my question is for both of you. Top 5 80s kids-friendly movies of all time, not including cartoons. And his are The Goonies, Never Ending Story, The Boy Who Could Fly, Indian in the Cupboard, and Flight of the Navigator. All those are good movies. I'm not a Goonies fan. I think I've told you guys that in the past. It's just not my thing. But those are all great choices, Carlos. For me, I'll start from the bottom and work my way up. And number 5, I got A Christmas Story. Man, that's a great family Christmas film. It really does capture Christmas, the feeling of Christmas Day, Christmas morning. Not too many films actually capture that, but A Christmas Story does. Also has a great 4K. And then at number 4, I got Uncle Buck. This is one of my favorite John Hughes movies. I love John Candy, and this is the perfect vehicle for John Candy. You see a young Macaulay Culkin in here, and it's just a fantastic, entertaining film. Supposedly, we're going to be getting a Kino Lorber 4K Blu-ray really soon of that one. And then at number 3, I have Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I actually really like the 90s film Honey, I Blew Up the Baby more than Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but we're talking 80s films. And Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is one of those films that I grew up with, despite not being born in the 1980s. I just really grew up with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I always loved that movie. I love the effects, the Lego, the giant ant in the backyard. I always thought that stuff was really cool when I was young. Also, a shrinking machine. Everybody loved that. But I really did enjoy Honey, I Blew Up the Baby as well. Probably a little bit more. And then at number 2, I have Big. Big is one of my favorite films of all time, starring Tom Hanks. This is another film that I grew up with. That's because my mom was a big film fan. She's kind of the reason I got into film. And one of her favorite films was Big. So we watched Big a lot growing up. It probably is the reason why Tom Hanks is my favorite actor of all time. Because this and Turner and Hooch, I watched so much as a kid. And I love them both to this very day. Although I think Canine, a very underrated 80s dog movie that kind of gets roped in with Turner Hooch, I really enjoy that movie as well, even though it's not Tom Hanks. It's Jim Belushi. And then at number 1, if you guys have been following this channel for any amount of time, you guys know that my favorite Spielberg film is E.T. That is a family movie, and that is absolutely my favorite 80s family movie, and I watched that with my brother and my mother so much growing up. Still watch it every single year to this very day, and I still get that emotional feeling in my chest, and a lot of that's probably due to that amazing John Williams score that's kind of manipulating your emotions a little bit, but I don't care. I absolutely love that movie. So that was a great question, Carlos. Thank you so much, buddy. And this question from Kevin Kruger is actually very interesting, and he asks, what are your favorite movies that include the following? And at number 1, he has a car accident. I was trying to think about it. There's movies out there that really deal with car accidents in a weird way, like the film Crash. That's having a fetish to getting in a car accident. But I was trying to think of what my favorite car accident scene in film is, and I came up with Fight Club. The car accident scene in that is beautiful. It just looks and sounds so good, how it's in slow motion with the rain pouring down. That is my favorite car accident scene in film. And a school shooting. I haven't really seen too many films with a school shooting in there, but there was a movie that came out about 10 or 11 years ago called We Need to Talk About Kevin. That's actually stars Tilda Swinton and John C. Reilly. I think this is the first time, either this or The Perks of Being a Wallflower, that we saw Ezra Miller. He actually plays the kid who does the school shooting in this movie, but this movie is a really, really dark film that really kind of looks at what the parents were going through, and mainly Tilda Swinton, and if she was a good mother to Ezra Miller's character. I think that movie is fantastic. It's just very, 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 very dark. I don't want to sell that short at all. So if you have any interest in seeing We Need to Talk About Kevin, just know what you're getting into. So I definitely recommend you see that film, but just go into it knowing what it is. A suicide. I actually saw the best film that features a suicide pretty recently, and it's called Christine. Not John Carpenter's Christine, based on the Stephen King novel. No, Christine, that came out in 2016, starring Rebecca Hall, and it's based on a true story of a news anchor. I think it was the first news anchor who ever killed themselves on air. So you know that this suicide is coming. The whole film is building up to it because it's based on a true story. So you already know what's coming. So you just take it in the film and seeing what caused it. And the entire film itself, even building up to this, even though you know what's coming, is still an amazing movie. I think it might still be on Netflix right now if you want to check this one out. It's a very, very, very underrated film that has a great story, a great screenplay, and an awesome Rebecca Hall performance in there. So I could definitely highly recommend that one. Rabbit Animal. You gotta go with Cujo. There is no more famous film about a rabbit animal than Cujo, and it still blows my mind. It's a Saint Bernard. I think I told you guys I had a Saint Bernard. It was the biggest, dumbest, lovable animal I ever had. I just cannot imagine them ending up like that. A Killer Kid. Pet Cemetery. Either way, or if you go with the original or you go with the remake, it ends up with a killer kid. Yeah, you know, he came back from the dead, so it makes sense why he's a killer kid and why he's such an animal, or she's such an animal, depending which version you watch. Either way, that is the scariest version of a killer kid. They are, you know, they really don't care. You can't reason with them. They're dead. Their dad should say dead. Twist ending, I'm gonna go with The Sixth Sense, mainly because The Sixth Sense isn't ruined by the twist ending. What that means is you can still go back and rewatch that film and still enjoy it, and you're just always looking for the hints of the twist ending coming. You know, he made Unbreakable, which also has a twist ending, and I think Unbreakable is a great film, but I think that The Sixth Sense, this really put M. Night Shyamalan on the map. He was known for the twist endings because of this, but I still think that the movie, even if you take that twist ending out, it's still a beautiful film, and the twist ending only just adds to it. So I think that even though it's kind of cliche to say The Sixth Sense, it's still the best, mainly because you could just revisit The Sixth Sense over and over and over again, and the twist ending only adds to how good the film is, and it's not the thing that puts your ass in the seat. A bad breakup, so I'm gonna have to go with Marriage Story. This is the film that stars Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, directed by Noah Baumbach. This had a Best Picture nomination. I really think that this is one of the films that really deals with divorce best. A lot of people would point to Kramer versus Kramer, but this, I grew up in a divorced household, so my parents are divorced, and then my mom decided to go back for round 2 and get divorced again. So I've seen a lot of divorce in my life, and I think that this was the best version of that on screen. I haven't seen the Ingmar Bergman film or the Ingmar Bergman miniseries or the miniseries based on it, which is Scenes from a Marriage. I also hear that that's a great depiction of divorce as well. I haven't seen it yet, so I can't really comment on it. So the film that I've seen the best that deals with a breakup is Marriage Story. You know, we kind of see the meme all the time with Adam Driver, but if you haven't seen the film, it is fantastic. And besides Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, you also get 2 great performances in there from Laura Dern and the late Riotas.
What did you say?
So that's my choice for that. Great question as well. I really appreciate that one, Kevin. And the next question is from Elo Your Virus. And how would you rank these modern day Blu-rays? Now, he didn't actually leave a list of Blu-rays. I think what he's talking about is how do I feel about modern day Blu-rays? You know, Blu-rays still come out. Some films don't come to 4K Blu-ray. This is another thing that you see a lot on Twitter. Again, it's kind of a cesspool, so you can't really take that on face value. But a lot of people always complain about films coming to 4K or some films not coming to 4K. We just talked about this last week with Fletch and Fletch Lives. I would say, you know, it's a business decision. If they don't feel like they're going to make enough money, I don't like it. You know, it's not something I'm a fan of. I would rather Fletch come to 4K Blu-ray, but I understand. They have to look at how much it costs to put this out on 4K Blu-ray. The discs cost more. You got to package it. Are they going to turn a profit on it? That's the big deal. So Kino Lorber felt like, you know what, Fletch and Fletch Lives will give it the new scan, but it's only going to come to Blu-ray. You'll see this sometimes when we talk about announcements from Arrow Video, Criterion, Shout Factory. Sometimes films just come to Blu-ray. They don't come to 4K Blu-ray. You saw that with Thinner. I really wanted Thinner to come to 4K Blu-ray from Shout Factory, but I understand. And for the most part, Blu-rays are still good. You know, we talk a lot about 4K Blu-rays here on the channel. You'll kind of hear me talk about the pack-in Blu-ray, and I'll compare it to the 4K Blu-ray. But Blu-rays, they're still a great thing. Do not sell Blu-rays short. They're still a pretty big jump from DVD. They're in 1080p, so they're in high definition. You can find a really good Blu-ray that is comparable to 4K Blu-ray. That's why Criterion had took such a long time to make 4K Blu-rays, because they thought they had great Blu-rays, and they do. They still put out fantastic Blu-rays. They put out great scans. You know, the thing is you're missing HDR and Dolby Vision, so you're losing that. You're losing all the high dynamic range. That's probably the biggest thing when you jump from 1080p to 4K. The resolution increase, you know, your eyes can only pick up so much. It is noticeable, but that's why we haven't really made that big jump from 4K to 8K, because your eyes aren't going to really pick that up. Your eyes can only see so much, but HDR and Dolby Vision, that stuff, your eyes can really notice that, because we're getting a wider range in colors. The blacks look deep while still retaining the brightness, so your eyes can pick all that up. But when it comes to a standard Blu-ray, there are some fantastic Blu-rays out there that are comparable to 4Ks. Now, it's kind of like when we first go from generations of consoles. For example, if we were to jump from the Xbox One X to the Xbox Series X, I still hate that Xbox did that with their names because it's confusing as hell. Early games released on the Xbox Series X look exactly like games on the Xbox One X. So if you were to compare the best Blu-ray to like an early, maybe in the first 2 to 3 years 4K, they look very similar. similar. But if you were to take a 2024 4K Blu-ray and you were to compare it to like a Blu-ray from 3 years ago, it's night and day. So Blu-rays are still really, really, really good. Don't sell them short. But you know, it's always going to be missing HDR10 and Dolby Vision. And that's going to be really noticeable for certain films. Not every film. Like you've heard me say it in the past, you know, the Blu-ray is still really good. You can still get the Blu-ray, but it's really going to come down to personal preference. So that was a great question, LL Your Virus. Thank you so much, buddy. And the next one is from my buddy Rogue1677, and we were actually talking about younger people who collect physical media. Rogue One collects physical media. He's a young person, and he knows a lot about film, classic film. He does not shut the door on a film, whether it's foreign or not. He is somebody who is a cinephile. That means he just loves film. We just need more people like that who love film at a young age, who can appreciate it. That's the whole thing. People just need to appreciate it. They need to open the door. It's a lot like reading. Like, I'm not a big reader. My wife Faith is a reader. The problem was when I was a kid, my father used reading as a punishment. So now I always associate reading a book with a punishment. That's why I only really read nonfiction. I don't really read fiction books, is because when I was a kid, if I couldn't play video games or watch movies, my dad would be like, go read a book. Like, he would take TV away for a week and he'd be like, just go read a book, and that's what you can do. And I always just associated it with punishment. And now, unfortunately, at 32 years old, I'm a little bit fucked up now, and now I associate reading with punishment, so I can only read nonfiction. And, you know, that's the thing, is we have to just let people know film and how it can be a great art form. And Rogue One is one of those people. And he asked, actually, what would be the most boring movies you've ever seen and left? So I've never actually really walked out of a movie. You know, I paid for it. I'm getting my money's worth. Even if the time that's being wasted is killing me, I still paid money for that ticket. I'm going to get my money's worth, damn it. But there have been some really, really boring movies. And, you know, it might be a little bit different for what you consider a boring movie and what I consider a boring movie. The thing is I love slow movies. I don't mind slow burns at all. I did a review here on the channel for a film, and the review didn't do that well. And a lot of people commented, said that was one of the most boring films that they've ever seen. And that film was Showing Up, which stars Michelle Williams. I thought that movie was great. Nothing really happens in that movie. It's really just a moment in time film. You're just spending time with the character and the people that she interacts with. No big stakes in this film. It's really just a person living their life out. And a lot of people would find that movie very, very boring. It's slowly paced. You know, it's not the most eye-catching film. I loved it, but not everybody is going to love that type of film. So the films that I find boring might be very different from films that you find boring. Because I actually think one of the most boring films I ever saw that and it's really disappointing. It's actually one of my most disappointing films that I've ever seen as well. You guys have heard me talk about Christopher Nolan. We're doing Christopher Nolan 4K Blu-ray reviews here on the channel. Well, when we get up to Dunkirk, you're going to hear me talk a lot about how disappointed I was. And I just felt like that movie was extremely boring. Despite the fact it looked beautiful, it sounded incredible. I really love all the technicals about that movie. The problem was that story just didn't have me invested. I did not care about the characters, and I care about Dunkirk. Like, I care a lot about what happened there. There is a great film that could be made. The problem is that Christopher Nolan decided to concentrate more on the experiment of time and telling these different storylines, each of them having different amounts of times lapse, and you just never get invested in any of the characters. Despite having great actors in the film, you just don't have the investment in them. And because you can't invest in the characters, you really don't care what's going on the screen, and you're just kind of bored. And I was really, really bored. Now, I've only seen the film once, and I bought the 4K Blu-ray to review here on the channel when we get up to Dunkirk, so maybe things will change for me, but I can literally remember sitting in the parking lot after seeing Dunkirk, and Christopher Nolan, he's one of my top 5 favorite directors, and just being so disappointed in Dunkirk. But, you know, it wasn't enough to waver for me. Oppenheimer was my favorite film of last year, and I think that is Christopher Nolan's best film. You know, even the greats have one that just missed for you, and unfortunately Dunkirk was that for me. Morbius is another one. You know, a lot of people do like Morbius. I hated that movie, and the worst thing you could do is just be boring, and I thought Morbius was very boring for a superhero film. That was awful. Haven't seen Madam Web yet. I've heard a lot of people say Madam Web is worse than Morbius, so, you know, I also really don't like the Transformers films, and those are action-heavy films, but because the characters don't connect to me and I have no investment in the story, I find those movies to be much more boring as well. That was a great question, Rogue One. Thank you so much, buddy. And the next question is from Rico Gomez. Since the 80s is your favorite decade for movies, what do you think was the best for movies? Mine was 1984 after seeing them mostly on video, but at the start of 1984, I didn't think so. I thought 1983 was going to be a great year, and when it was over, the majority sucked. I mean, for me, my favorite decade, and it's hard because there's a lot of great years in the 1980s. I think overall the 80s are the best decade for film. You know, that's a personal opinion. A lot of people might say the 70s, a lot of people might say the 90s, the 2000s might slip in there for some people. Older viewers might think like the 50s or 60s. For me, it goes 80s, 70s, then 90s. And it could go back and forth with the 70s and 90s, but 80s is cemented as my favorite decade for film. And I would say 1984 is probably my favorite as well. It's either 84, 87, or 89. It's really tough to pick between those 3 years. The only reason I give the edge to 84 is not only did we get The Terminator, which is my favorite film of all time, but we got Gremlins, which is another fantastic film. We also got Footloose that year. We got the first Coen Brothers film, Blood Simple. So 84 is probably my favorite, but 87 is really close as well. There's a lot of films that came out in 1987. And another one that's really big is 1989. That year is known for its summer, the summer of sequels. That's where we get Batman 89, Lethal Weapon 2, The Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2. So much great films came out in 1989. 1982, you really just talk about June of 1982. That's the same month that we got The Thing, Blade Runner, Poltergeist, E.T., and Wrath of Khan all came out in June of 1982. But I'm just going to still lean towards 1984 as being the best year for that decade, even though there's a lot of, I mean, honestly, every single year in the 1980s has great films come out. Even the ones that aren't like mainstream, a lot of the films that were winning Oscars in the 1980s aren't really the most known. A lot of people don't talk about them anymore, like Gandhi or Ordinary People. I think that those movies are fantastic. So I just think even if you just were to concentrate on the straightforward dramas of the 1980s, I don't think they get the love that they deserve, because a lot of people, including myself, I'm very guilty of this, put a lot of films that didn't win awards at the forefront of the 1980s, like Back to the Future, Terminator, Batman. These aren't award-winning films, but these are the films that a lot of people grew up with and absolutely love, and I'm no different. I always think that the 1980s is the best decade for film. So that was a great question as well. Thank you so much, Rico. And the next question is from Kevin Kruger again. He said, how would you rank the following movies based on cinematography? So I had to make a list for this one because these are all great films, but I will start from the bottom and work my way up. And at number 11, and something has to be last. These are all great films, shot beautifully, but I think the one that has aged the worst of these 11 films is Seven Samurai. That's why I would have that at number 11. At number 10, I have Touch of Evil. When I think of Touch of Evil, the cinematography isn't really the first thing that comes to mind about that film. Obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is that incredible opening scene where we don't cut. Everybody remembers that about Touch of Evil, but the rest of the film is good as well. At number 9, I have Saving Private Ryan. I mean, that movie is shot gorgeously, but at this point, it's not the best shot war film of all time. I think All Quiet on the Western Front has actually surpassed that. At number 8, I got Stalker. I love Stalker, and I do think that that is one of the best shot films ever, but you know what? There's just 7 films I think that are slightly better. Like number 7, Paris, Texas. Paris, Texas is in my top 5 favorite films of all time. I think a lot about the cinematography, especially early in the film where we have that green lighting going on and the shots in the diner. All that stuff just stands out in my mind. But I gotta be honest. So at number 6, I have Chinatown, another one that's in my top 5 favorite films of all time. And I love how that film is shot. I think LA has never looked more beautiful than it does in Chinatown. I just think of all the scenes with the sun setting or the sun rising. You get that purple and orange sky. I mean, I really hope that movie is coming to 4K Blu-ray like the rumors say, because that movie absolutely deserves it. At number 5, this film is probably most known for its cinematography, because I wouldn't even say it's Stanley Kubrick's best film, but Barry Lyndon, using the natural lighting. That is what this film is most known for, and for good reason. It's beautiful. I absolutely love Barry Lyndon's cinematography. At number 4, I got 2001, A Space Odyssey, another Stanley Kubrick film, another film that really has stood the test of time because of its incredible cinematography, and of course because of its incredible special effects. And then at number 3, I got Citizen Kane. This did a lot for the world of cinematography. This is the first film that Orson Welles ever made, so he wasn't very well aware how to even shoot a film, so he had one of the best cinematographers working with him, and he would just explain what he wanted to see, and that cinematographer would get it done. And this movie just features so many beautiful dissolves, so many great things that they do with the camera, whether it be like going through windows, and they did this in the 1940s. So this movie had a huge influence on film going forward. That's why if you were to watch Citizen Kane now, you could still enjoy it. It really doesn't feel like it's aged that much. I mean, other than the clothes and the dialogue and stuff like that, but still the subject matter still stands the test of the time, and the visuals are still absolutely stunning. But at number 2, I have to go with what I think is the best film that was ever shot in black and white, The Night of the Hunter. This cinematography is based on German Expressionism, and it just looks absolutely gorgeous. There's a Kino Lorber 4K Blu-ray release that came out last year. I absolutely loved it. There's also a Criterion release. They have different extras. Me personally, just because the visuals are the standout thing about The Night of the Hunter and the Robert Mitchum performance, I still think you need to get that Kino Lorber 4K, which brings us to number one of my favorite films again, and that is Blade Runner. If you guys saw the video of me and David talking about Alien and the worlds that Ridley Scott makes, well, I think he never did it any better than he did with Blade Runner. I think he took everything he learned with Alien and creating these atmospheres, these worlds, he brought it over to Blade Runner, and he created this futuristic Los Angeles, that steamy looking Los Angeles, dirty, rainy, dark Los Angeles in the future, blending all of the worlds and to just create this amazing, incredible one. And I think Blade Runner is the best when it comes to cinematography based on the 11 films on this list. One day, though, I'll tell you guys what I think are the best films when it comes to cinematography. So that was a great question as well, and there's still a few other Kevin Kruger questions that we'll get to next week. It ended up actually being a heavier news show than I was expecting, so that's going to do it here for me on another episode of Let's Talk. I really do hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, or you could even become a channel member like our producers, John Doe Juggalo, Jason Martin, and Mr. Smelly Potato, or you could even become a channel director like Frank's Media and Reviews, and make sure you guys go over and check out his channel as well. He is a fantastic guy who has a fantastic channel, who I think really does deserve your support. But if you got no money to throw our way, guys, don't feel bad about it. We just really appreciate you checking out this video. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, get out in those streets and tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.